Hello, welcome to Eat to Treat. I'm Amaris Williams. I have a PhD in nutrition, and I'm joined today by Chef Jim Warner, chef extraordinaire. Worked at the Ohio State University Western Medical Center for a long time, and um, has been a chef for even longer than that. And he's gonna make today. Do you want to tell him?
Yeah, we have a couple different dishes here. We have a edamame and sweet potatoes with a Thai curry paste that we finish off, and then we have a spaghetti squash that we're going to roast, and we're going to finish that off with a roasted tomato sauce that we puree. Very simple to make, very nutritious, completely plant-based, and it's a lot of fun to make.
Great. So do you want to talk about the
Yeah.
equipment that we're using?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the equipment that we're using today. A lot of people, and I'm going to ask the question, if you're still using the cutlery that you got as a wedding gift, it's probably time to upgrade your cutlery. What we have here today that I'm using is a knife. It's called a Santoku knife, and if you see the little pockets here, I like working with these for a couple of different reasons. Number one, these little pockets. If you have something like a potato or something that would stick to your blade, these little pockets here create an air gap and allow the potatoes or whatever to fall off the knife. Secondly, if you look at the knife, it's a solid piece of steel. A lot of really inexpensive knives that you'll find, they'll have a stamped out piece of steel, and then you'll have a plastic handle or a wood handle. This is actually one piece of steel that was ground down, so you have the solid piece of steel. It's very well balanced. It's a combination of stainless steel, a little bit of carbon steel, so you're able to bring back the sharpness of the knife. It fits my hand perfectly. I also have a smaller one, and this one here, you can see it's the same piece of steel that goes the whole way through the knife, and it's got the section here and the section at the end that is the stainless steel. And this is a little bit smaller for cutting up smaller things. I love using these, and we'll use these two knives for everything that we're preparing today. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our edamame and sweet potato dish, but we have a couple of sweet potatoes here that we're going to work with and we're going to cut. The easiest way to do these that I found is you're going to take your knife and you're going to cut a real thin slice or a real thin sliver off the bottom. And the reason that you're going to do that is you want your sweet potato to remain flat on your cutting board so you don't cut yourself. If you're trying to cut a sweet potato that's rolling around, you stand a greater chance of cutting yourself. So I'm going to just take the edges, cut the edges off, or the sides off, and do this over here, do this again, and then square it off. And then with the pieces that I have left, I'm just going to take my peeler and peel these down. And this is where it's important to have the right tools for the job that you're doing. This peeler that we have is an OXO peeler, and this peeler is made for older hands like myself. That gives you a better grip on that, and it's easier for you to work with. Take all of these pieces here and put these into our compost bowl. You don't want to waste anything. And the larger pieces, if you want to use those, you can actually take these and bake these in the oven until they're dried. Add a little bit of kosher salt to this, or maybe some hot pepper or some chili peppers or some seasoning that you like, and use these as chips. And number one, you're getting all the nutrition on the skin. Number two, it's a very inexpensive snack because it's already ready for you. We're going to do this.
Delicious.
And it really is good. We're taking the second sweet potato and we're doing the same thing. And if you watch closely, what I'm doing is I'm going to cut the bottom off here to stop it from spinning around. And this piece here is going to be your snack later tonight, as are these other edges of the sweet potato. And you'll see in a second why I'm cutting this the way I'm doing this. So I'm going to take the remainder and peel that into our compost bowl. And this is a part where knife skills are definitely important, and you should pay attention to what you're doing. I'm a big believer in kitchen safety. Now, the knives that we're using, what you want to do is when you're grabbing the food like this, you want to grab it so your knuckles are up and down, so the blade of your knife is against your knuckles. And you never want to raise the blade of your knife above your knuckles, nor do you want to splay your fingers out like this, because when you do splay your fingers out like this, what could happen is you're going to end up losing a fingernail. So you'll see when I cut, I always have my knuckles curled under. So to make this here, and what we're doing with the edamame, we want to make the sweet potato and the edamame the same size so it looks better and cooks around the same amount of time. So you can see here, I have the sweet potatoes and I have them all cut into 4 little pieces like this. Now I'm going to take my knife square it up so I have all these little thin pieces. And this is something that I wouldn't expect you to be able to do overnight. This does take some time. Now I'm going to take our knife and cut these in 1/4 inch dice. So these are ready to go for our dish. And we're doing the same thing here. Now this one's a little bit bigger, so I'm not going to cut all 4 at one time because I might stand a chance to cut myself, and I do not want to do that. So we have these here. We're going to cut these down. Then you want to tap them back into place. And just go ahead and cut these. And you'll see with our finished dish why it's important that we have everything the same size.
We got someone saying hello, Chef.
Hi. Okay, so now we have all of our sweet potatoes. We're going to turn on our burner. And we're going to get this to about a medium heat. And we're going to turn that down a little bit so we don't put the oil in there and it starts to flare up pretty quickly. That's the last thing that we want with this dish here. So we're going to let
you would say that's at a medium heat? Or?
That's at about a medium heat. I would say if you have an electric stove or you have a gas stove, use a medium flame on your electric stove. Keep it at a medium. And if it's too hot, just turn it down. And you'll see when we put a little bit of olive oil in here, and then we add our sweet potatoes to it, the first thing that you're going to hear is the sizzle. And you want to hear that sizzle because that means your pan is hot enough. If you put your food into a hot pan and it just sits there, your food is not, or your pan is not hot enough. You want that pan to start to caramelize the vegetables, and when it caramelizes, what that really means is you're taking the natural sugars that are in the sweet potato, and you're not changing the sugar content. You're actually enhancing it by changing the chemical composition by adding heat to the dish, and it tastes much better. So we're gonna add just a touch of olive oil, and if you put your olive oil in your pan, and if your olive oil starts to smoke, or if your olive oil starts to move around the pan too fast, and you can see that here, where it's moving around the pan pretty good, you want to completely coat the bottom of the pan. And what you'll do here is, in about a minute, you're going to see the oil in the pan start to look like waves. And when they start to look like waves in the pan, that's when it's time to add your food to that, because then you've got the correct heat for this. So we're going to go ahead and put this into a bowl, and we're going to add this to our dish here.
Just let me know if you need me to do anything.
Okay. We're going to go ahead, and if you can open up that bag of edamame, that'd be great.
Okay.
So right now we have about a little over 3 cups of sweet potatoes that we have already diced. If you don't want to go through this, you can also buy diced butternut squash or diced sweet potatoes. Sometimes they're a little bit difficult to find, but these work just as well, and that didn't take that long to do. And if you look here, and I don't know whether you can see that in the pan where the oil's starting to, I call it skitter across the pan. It's kind of moving across the pan, and it's kind of wavy. That means it's ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to the pan. Okay, I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit. And you can't hear that, but you've got the real, you hear the heat and you got a little bit of a sizzle on that. So we're going to let this go. A lot of people tend to put food into a pan and then start to stir it immediately. My recommendation for you would be to take the pan, put the food in there, and just let it sit. Because what happens is when you put cold food in, say you have food that's say 75 degrees here in this room, and we add that to the pan, it's going to reduce the heat in the pan, and it's going to take longer for the heat to come back up and start to cook the food. Today we have actually matching spoons here for the dish. I'm going to start to stir this around a little bit, and you can hear that sizzle. And we don't want to, again, we don't want to stir that up too much because it'll kind of reduce the heat. I'm going to add some salt and pepper to this, and the salt and pepper that mix that I like to use is when I was a private chef. I worked in a number of homes, and I always had a little mason jar of 2 parts kosher salt to 1 part coarse ground black pepper. And I do that for 2 reasons. Number one, it's very tactile, so I tend to undersalt food. And if you've got hypertension or any other issues where salt is a problem for you, this is the way to undersalt your food. And number 2 is if you look at what I have here in my hand, you can see that. You can see the pepper and you can see the salt. So I can tell by the amount of pepper that I have in here that I have twice as much salt. So it's kind of a cheater for me to be able to use that in this dish, but it works. Okay, so you hear the sizzle, and this is going to start to brown up in a minute here. I'm going to add the salt and pepper, and I'm going to add the salt and pepper, and I'm going to sprinkle it around like this. A lot of people, and I've seen this a lot in kitchens, where people will go forward and they'll get that little blue jug of Morton salt and do one of these numbers here. They have no clue of how much pepper they're actually, or how much salt they're actually putting in the dish. This way I know. If you wanted to add a little bit of cumin to this, that would be great, but with the seasoning that we have, I think it'll be plenty hot and plenty spicy for you to try. So we have the sweet potatoes, and these are cooking, and because they're so chock full of liquid, they don't really take that long to cook. And one of the things that there's a misnomer about sweet potatoes is that they take forever to cook. If you would put a sweet potato in the oven and a regular Idaho potato, the sweet potato is going to get done that much faster. Number one, there's not that much starch in the sweet potato. Number two, they're so chock full of water, the potato actually steams as well as it cooks. But use dry heat, and with sweet potatoes, I like to wrap mine, brush a little olive oil on the skin, because I love to eat the skin on the sweet potato because that's where all the nutrients are. Hence our little pan over here that we have with our leftover stuff. And I don't know whether you can see that. You can see the oil. And here it's starting to move around a little bit, and you can see the sizzle. And if you were here, you could smell the smell, but it smells really good. So
yeah.
we're going to move this around here a little bit. And the best way to check this to see how far along it is just take probably the biggest piece out of there that you can and run your knife through it. And believe it or not, these are already getting pretty soft, and they weren't even in the pan more than 4 minutes. So that's a little trick that we like to use.
So you cut it up small, and you don't have to cook it as long.
Exactly. And the bonus is if you look at the edamame that we have here that's shelled, the edamame is about the same size of the sweet potato. So we eat with our eyes, and if food looks appetizing, generally it's going to taste good. So the reason that these are the same size is, number one, that they'll cook. Number two, you can give an equal amount of both on your spoon or your fork as you eat these. So this is just a real good way to make the food look that more appetizing. We are going to make the marinade here, or we're going to make the sauce that we're going to use for the sweet potato edamame. Sweet potatoes are starting to cook. They're just about ready. I'm going to go ahead and add the entire bag of edamame. And make sure whether you buy edamame, you buy the shelled edamame, okay? There is edamame that's in the pod. If you try to use that for this dish, it'll be a failure. And you don't want to do that because you've got to pick it out of the pod. But if you do buy the pods, you can take that, thaw it out, brush a little butter on that, and you can roast that, and then you can eat the pods, and they're actually very, very delicious. So we just dumped all of our edamame in here, and I'll show you what this looks like. Now the edamame comes in frozen. That's really the only way you can buy fresh edamame, or buy edamame is you can't buy it fresh. You have to buy it frozen. So you see how we have these two these going here. And I'm going to switch burners here. So one burner's looks like it's starting to run out of gas a little bit. So we'll go ahead and switch this around. Okay, so we have that. Amaris is going to go ahead and change our burner for us. Now, what we're going to do is, in order to make the sauce for this, we're going to take some fresh limes, some fresh oranges, and we're in luck today because when grocery shopping occurred today, we got blood oranges, which is going to give the dish that much more flavor. And we're using Thai curry paste. This stuff is actually amazing. You only need about a tablespoon of this, but what's great about it is you can use this in other dishes. If you want to use this for, add this with a little bit of mayonnaise. There we go. Yep, everything good to go. You want to add this with a little bit of mayonnaise, and then use it as a spread for whatever. It's great. So you can hear the sizzle of our sweet potatoes and edamame. So they're going. That's going to need about another 2 minutes to go, and we will be ready. We're going to take about a tablespoon of the Thai red curry paste, and we're going to put that into our bowl. And what's great about this is it's got a wonderful aroma. It's got ginger, lemongrass, all sorts of different seasonings that really give this a complex flavor profile for your dish. So next we're going to add some blood orange juice, and we're going to add some fresh limes. With the oranges, what I found is you can do one of two things. One is you could put the orange or your lime in the microwave for 10 seconds. If you do it for a minute, you're going to have a real big mess because it's going to blow up. But the upshot is it might blow up, but all that citrus juice that goes all over your microwave oven, you're going to have the cleanest microwave oven in town because all that acid from the citrus is going to eat that away. So we're going to roll this, and what this does is the heat from your hand helps warm up the little sacks of juice in here as well and loosen them up, and it allows you to take the juice out of here a lot more cleanly. If you look here, we've got these beautiful, beautiful blood oranges. Same with limes, and most of you who have worked with limes before know that they're generally pretty rock hard. So you want to do the same thing perhaps for a little bit longer. And because I am a working chef, I'm going to do a little thing here that if you have these at home, I would certainly use them. I'm going to go ahead and put on a pair of gloves. Once I start to squeeze this juice into the Thai curry paste, I'm going to find out where all the cuts are on my fingers, and I don't want to find out.
Not that way.
No, not that way at all. So we're going to squeeze these, and you can tell very much by that little rolling action that we did, and by the heat from our hands that released a lot of the juice. And what I'm doing with the lime is I'm actually turning it inside out, and I'm squeezing this in here as well. And again, this smells absolutely amazing. Blood orange, we're going to squeeze the orange juice into here. If we get a little bit of pulp in here, that's certainly okay. It's not a big deal. As long as we don't get any seeds in there, we're in good shape. We're going to go ahead and stir this, because the last thing that you want is that you do not want to get a big bite of the Thai curry paste, because it could be a problem for you. Might get a little bit too hot for what you expect. And then just to finish this off, and I like to do this because it adds a little bit of a sheen to it, I'm going to take about a tablespoon of unsalted butter, and I'm going to add this to the sauce, and we're going to pour this in to the pan. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to let this You can see this, we're just gonna stir this around and we're gonna let the butter melt. And once the butter melts, what that'll do, it'll give it a nice glaze of the dish, and it will also, you know, bring the sauce to a little more thickness. Plus, it adds a little bit of a richer flavor. It kind of cuts the acidic flavor of the lime and the blood orange. But there it is. It looks great. This is actually fantastic. If you like seafood, you like salmon, what I will do is get a piece of salmon at the store, take this piece of salmon, take its skin down, put it on a real hot pan, let the skin get to the pan, pull the salmon out, lift the skin up, and then put the side of the salmon down that did have the skin on it, because you got rid of the skin. I'm not a big fan of salmon skin.
Oh, okay.
And then just flip it over, and you want to get that salmon almost crispy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get it crispy, I call it salmon bacon because it has the mouthfeel of bacon. It feels like bacon, but it's got that nice crunch to it. And the inside of the salmon is like perfectly creamy. It is so good because what you've done is when you sear the outside of the dish,
Mm-hmm.
you are leaving all of that moisture inside so it doesn't escape, so it doesn't steam away.
Okay, yeah.
So it's one of those, you know, one of those kitchen hacks that you learn when you're going to school. So here we have the dish, and you can see here, if you look at the sauce, see how that thickened up a little bit? That's the butter. That's the butter, and that's the reduction that we have of the lemon juice, the Thai curry paste, and the lime juice. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get a plate. We're going to dish this out. And we thought to make this fun is that we'd use a little bit of a darker color plate for a couple of different reasons. Number one, it's going to make the food pop. Number two, it's great for portion control. So that's probably a little bit more than what we might recommend. That might be, you know, 1.5 portions here. So you want to bring that all in the center. If you have any leftover juice sauce, you can put that on there. And then just to make this a little more fun, you could put any kind of garnish on here. If you wanted fresh herbs, cilantro really works well in this dish. But for our purposes today, I'm going to take a fresh lime that we have here. And with the fresh lime, I'm going to take my peeler and I'm going to peel the lime just enough so I don't get too much into the white, because that white pithy part is very, very bitter. So you want to get as little bit or as little of the green as you possibly can. So you got to kind of move your knife back and forth on this. So we're going to sprinkle this on top. And again, you want to save this lime because now that you've taken the skin off, the lime is that much more ready to be squeezed. These two here got a little bit too thick in the pith. So we're going to slice these into real thin julienne strips. And we're going to take these and we're going to add these to our dish. And number one, it's going to make our dish pop because it's got all these great flavor profiles. And we're going to take a little bit of the salt and pepper mixture that I have here. And we're going to sprinkle this on top again. And before we finish it, we're just going to take our towel, and then where we have it around the sides here, we're going to clean that off so we have a nice looking clean plate. When you go to a restaurant, this is what all the chefs are doing in the back, or what the expediter is doing. They're cleaning up the plates so you get a nice clean plate. And there's what our final dish looks like. Right there.
It's amazing.
It looks amazing. It smells amazing.
Great.
And that's about 12 ounces worth. And this holds pretty well. What you want to do is, once you take it off the pan, is take this here, put this on a flat a pan, or put this onto a flat cookie sheet, immediately stick it in your refrigerator and let it cool, because the longer it heats up, the longer the sweet potatoes cook and it gets kind of mushy. So if you freeze this, or if you refrigerate this, you can actually freeze it and then just bring it out and then put it in a pan that's pretty hot and cook it really, really quickly. Bring it to 165 degrees, as you should with any reheating any foods. And you've got a great dish that's already pre-made. The seasoning is really going to come out stronger because you've left this dish have the opportunity to, all the flavors are married.
Mm-hmm.
so that they've had more time to spend with each other. And this is a really great dish, simple dish. Again, great with seafood. You could do this with chicken if you happen to like scallops or anything like that. That would work real well. But you want to make sure that with any of the seafood or high protein pieces of meat, whether it's fish, chicken, or shellfish, you want to cook them pretty quickly to save all of that moisture inside. And what you're doing is you're forcing the heat inside that piece of fish or that scallop or that piece of salmon, and it's going to be that much nicer. You get that nice crisp outside. You've got that nice moist inside. So there we have our first dish.
All right.
Okay.
It tastes delicious too. You haven't tasted it, but I have. It's really good.
This is kind of hot, so
I'll take it.
Okay. Okay. Looks like we have dinner here for somebody. We're going to wipe off our cutting boards. And we're going to start with our next dish, which is spaghetti squash. Now, with the spaghetti squash, most people will bypass this. My recommendations is, when you go to the produce aisle and you're buying your produce, you should try something new every week. Most Americans eat the same 200 foods every year. So if you think of adding one new item from the produce aisle every time you go to the grocery store, whether it's once a week, you're increasing your plant-based food intake by a large percentage. And you're going to find out that you actually like this. Your body likes this. It's really a great way to introduce new foods to your I guess your gut biome, which is really important. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that these days, that things are changing, and a lot of it is because of the processed foods that we eat. And a lot of people are eating fast foods, which really have no really healthy nutritional value.
Yeah, and I told everyone a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or two ago, how I went to a lecture by a gastroenterologist, and he was saying that we should eat at least 30 plants a week.
Wow.
So, and that he said spices count. So cumin, garlic, onion, all that counts. So that's 3 right there that people frequently use, and that's already 10% of your plants for the week just in those spices.
Okay.
So, but obviously you don't want to just eat tiny amounts of everything. You want a decent portion of plants every day as well. So portion sizes count, but also the number of plants counts.
Okay, so we've got our first dish down. So the second dish is we've got spaghetti squash with a roasted tomato sauce, and we're going to use today. Actually, we have 2 things here. One is we've got the spaghetti squash. We're going to show you how to cut that and how to roast it. We have some heirloom tomatoes, which are absolutely beautiful, and these make an amazing sauce. I did make the sauce out of Roma tomatoes, and I'll show you how I did those and how I prepared those and got those ready for the sauce. But the first thing that I want to do is take the spaghetti squash. You've probably seen this at the store 100 times, and you probably walked away from it 100 times saying, I have no idea what to do with this. We're here today to tell you what to do with this and to show you how to make this work. So the best way for this is you're going to let this roll, and eventually it's going to find a spot that's flat. So once you find that flat spot, you're going to take your knife and you're just going to put it in there right in the center. And hopefully you can see that there. We're going to take our knife straight up and down. I'm going to push that right in until I get to the bottom of the cutting board. And then for safety, I'm going to put my left hand on the other side to hold it down. And I'm just going to bring the blade down all the way to the bottom, and it's going to be halfway cut. If we get to the other side, we're just going to flip it over, start where we stopped on the other side, take it, bring your knife down. I'm going to take out all the seeds out of here. And it's really not that difficult. You just need a spoon. A lot of people I know that roast pumpkin seeds. These seeds can roast really well. You've got to let them dry. You've got to let any of the pithy part here of the spaghetti squash, you want to get rid of that. But if you want these seeds, just take these, rinse them off, let them dry. You can roast them in an oven, and add some cumin to this, a little bit of salt and pepper, and it's just like chomping on peanuts watching a football game, or watching television. This is a great way to go. So when we roast these, the secret to this is what I found is when I roast them, we're going to cut them in half. And what I did, and you can see, I have the salt and pepper mix all around this here. And you can see I have the pepper here and all through this. I took that, and then I took a little bit of olive oil, sprinkled that on top. And then what I did with this is I roasted it upside down on my roasting pan. And the reason for that is I want that heat to come down on top of the squash, and I want that sealed on the squash. So actually what happens is as this heats up, the steam from the spaghetti squash actually comes up inside the spaghetti squash. The heat comes down, and it creates a steam and roasting situation that allows the noodles to come out of here. I'm calling them noodles because once you see what we do here, you'll see that they look exactly like noodles. The tomatoes that we had is we have Roma tomatoes, and what I did with these is I cut them in half, and then I roasted these cut side up. The reason for that is when you roast the Romas or any kind of tomato, what you want to happen is you want the moisture to evaporate from the tomatoes. So these were obviously round tomatoes. That was the mate to that. They're not round anymore. They're rather flat. And again, if we put a little salt and pepper, a little bit of garlic on these, and a little bit of olive oil, and roasted these for about 40 minutes until they started to collapse a little bit.
What temperature are we roasting these at?
I think I roasted these at about 350 to 400. Okay. I started roasting these at about 350, but it looked like it wasn't moving really quickly, so I jumped it up to 450, and within 10 minutes, they were at the point where I felt that they were really where they should have been. One of the things that we roasted these with is with garlic. Garlic is our friend. You can buy the whole clove, very inexpensive, and I'm going to show you a real quick way how to do this. There's a couple ways that you can do this to break apart the cloves that are inside this ball. Number one, you could ask somebody else to do it for you, but 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, no, I'm not doing that for you. But if that's the case, you're going to take a towel, you're going to put the garlic inside, and then you're just going to press on it with the heel of your hand, and you're going to open that up, and you see how you have all of these lovely little cloves of garlic, and they are just ready to go. And what you'll do is just take the garlic, and you can keep this at room temperature for about 2 weeks. After about 2 weeks, it starts to get a little bit moldy, and that's not good. Or you could take these in and peel these down completely and put them in oil and put that into your refrigerator, because you don't want to leave these out of room temperature. So with that little move there, we got rid of all that leathery paper skin here that we have. I'm going to show you how to crack these again so you can chop the garlic. So we're going to take our garlic skin and add this to our compost pile. Okay. So now with the garlic, the best way that I found to do this is take your knife, okay? If you're right-handed, you want to make sure that the sharpest part of the blade is facing away from your body. If you're left-handed, make sure that's facing away from your body. Do not do this when you smash it, and you'll see why, because you could cut yourself, and that could be a real problem for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my knife just like that on top of the garlic, and I'm going to take my right hand, hold on to the garlic, and I'm just going to take the heel of my hand and just smash it. And when you smash it, all that silver skin comes off, and then you're just left with the meat of the garlic. And this smells great. And you could buy the Tolkoff's garlic that's in the can that's already chopped up. But if you can do this, your food is going to be that much better. Garlic is an amazing plant. It has so much flavor. I love roasting this and putting this on just a slice of bread, or make a roasted garlic pizza. The way to do the roasted garlic is just take the garlic clove, cut the top off, put a little bit of olive oil on there, roast it in aluminum foil for about 30 minutes at about 350. And then when it comes out of the oven, you're just going to squeeze it, and the cooked pulp of the garlic's just going to squeeze out like toothpaste out of a toothpaste tube. And it's absolutely delicious. And again, as we chop this, I'm going to use the same technique that I did before with my fingers, where I'm going to keep my knuckles up like this. Okay, so we have all this chopped up here. And with garlic, you know, you don't really have to chop it, you know, super fine, just enough. But some people are purists and they like to cut it super fine. And when you're cutting this, you will know if you have a dull knife, because if you look, I have the garlic here on my blade, and this is another way that we use our knives. If you have a lot of moisture, a lot of wetness on your cutting board, that tells you that your knife is not very sharp. So instead of cutting the garlic, what you're doing is just smashing the garlic, and you're letting all the garlic juice and all the properties of the garlic and the flavor on the cutting board instead of in your dish. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to crank this up a little bit. Move our garlic off to the side. And the little surprise here that we're going to add to the end is we have some Belgioso Parmesan cheese. So we're going to use a zester. And if you haven't seen these things are actually pretty amazing because what you'll do is you'll run the food up and down the zester here. And they've got little blades coming this way here. And when you zest, all the food stays here in the zester, and you just take your thumb and you slide that right off into your dish. And we're going to use this as a garnish to sprinkle on our dish. Now for the tomatoes that we have here, just to give you an idea of what we're going to do with these. The tomatoes, what we would do, if we have the heirloom tomatoes instead of the Romas, you would just cut them into quarters like this, and just take these and do the same thing. A little bit of garlic, olive oil, and salt and pepper. Or if you wanted to cut them into, say, 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch thick slices, you could also roast them this way. And when you puree these, I puree everything from the stem to the seeds, and it makes for an amazing sauce. The spaghetti squash, the roasted spaghetti squash we have here. Now I roasted this morning, and I put this in the refrigerator, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm just reaching in here inside the shell, and the spaghetti squash is going to come out, and you'll see in a second why they call it spaghetti squash, because you've got these nice long strands of the squash here. And once you put this in your pan to heat it, and then you add your sauce at the very end, you top it with a sauce, it's absolutely delicious. You can make fritters with this. You can add this to soups as a garnish. It's really, really very good. So we've got our pan that's pretty hot. Let me go ahead and toss my gloves. So the pan is pretty hot. I'm going to turn that down a little bit so we don't smoke out the wood here. Add just a touch of olive oil, and that olive oil is moving around pretty fast. We're going to add a little bit of chopped garlic to this here. And you can hear that sizzle, so that tells you that it's ready to go. So we're going to take our spaghetti squash, and you hear that sizzle right away. We're going to use that. We're going to turn our spaghetti squash, we're going to turn that inside out. So we're going to scrape all of this delicious spaghetti squash off of the skin, or off of the husk of this. And right now the room smells amazing. It smells like garlic, smells like olive oil. Now we've got the spaghetti squash. That's ready to go. I'm going to let this cook at a lower temperature. I could clean this a little bit better, but for time's sake, we're not going to do that right now. And we're going to let this saute. And you can see, because the pan was hot enough, that this is an aluminum pan, that because the pan was hot enough, I'm not going to get any stickiness from the pan. It's just going to move around pretty much on its own. I'm going to season this with a little bit of salt and pepper. Again, I'm going to look and see what we have in terms of the amount of seasoning that we have on there. I'm going to go ahead and clean up our board here a little bit. Okay, so in order to make our sauce, these are hot. So, suppose these just come out of the oven, okay? What you want to do is you're going to want to let them cool off a little bit, because if you put these into your food processor when it's hot, what may happen is the steam coming off of these tomatoes may blow the top off your food processor. I've seen it happen. It's not pretty, so we want to make sure that that does not happen. Yeah. We're going to move the Ninja onto the center of the cutting board. And this thing is pretty amazing. I love this, but when you are working with this and are cleaning this, make sure you don't drop this in the sink and get it later, because you will get cut. But this thing is amazing because it swirls everything up and then back down again, so you get a nice even puree. We're going to take all of our tomatoes and we're going to add those to the Ninja, and then we're going to add all of the oil that we had here in the pan. All that oil went in this dish as well. I'm going to add just a tad more olive oil, because olive oil makes everything better. Okay. So we have everything in the in here. We're going to go ahead and lock this, turn the power on, and then we're going to blend it.
Loud.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. You had your headphones on? So you can see this is our sauce. It's nice and light.
Rotate it. Yeah.
Okay, it's nice and light, and it has that you know, completely pureed look. What I'm going to do with this is take a small pan. I'm going to take the blade out after I dump some of this out into the pan. Take the blade out and then kind of knock the remainder of the sauce into the pan. And about six of those Roman tomatoes made about 1.5 cups of the sauce. So we're going to reheat this quickly. And if you're like me, I like to keep things as clean as I possibly can and as pure as I possibly can. And if you look at the foods here, we've added nothing that would be considered a preservative. We added nothing that would be considered any chemicals to these dishes. This is pure food, the way it should be, and we're making dishes that are really pretty darn simple to make, and your body will thank you for these, because if you eat more plant-based foods during your week, your body's going to feel much better, because there's so many benefits to the plant-based diet. Okay, so we're heating up our sauce. Let me get a plate here. Okay. So we have our portion size plate here. Now this is about probably a 9-inch plate, and we're just going to pile the spaghetti squash here in the center. And I'm going to turn this up a little bit so we can caramelize this just a little bit. So I'd like to see that color in there. And again, that caramelization is taking the sugar and changing the chemical composition a little bit without adding any more sugar that was already in the dish. Okay, our sauce is going along pretty well. I'm going to season that a little bit more salt and pepper. Okay, and just a touch more olive oil. If you want to add butter to that, you could. If you are a vegan, then you wouldn't want to add the butter to this, but that is ready to go. And it looks great, it smells great. Normally, what you could do with this is basil and tomatoes go together like peanut butter and chocolate. They're two really great flavors that blend themselves together. But with this dish here, we're going to take some of this Parmesan cheese, and we are going to keep this going. So this one here, I'm going to move over to the smaller burner. This one here, I'm going to move to the hotter burner here. Okay, and again, you can hear that sizzle coming up. And again, when you're cooking at home, you want to make sure that when you are cooking, you don't have all of your handles kind of willy-nilly like this. You want to have them all in the same direction, Because if you're right-handed, you want to go into it like this. If you go into it like this and the pan's heavy and you try to pick it up, you might not be able to balance that pan. So you want to keep it so, it works with the physicality of your body, and it works with the structure and your muscle memory. Because if you do this for a long time, you're going to know how to do this pretty much every time. So we have the spaghetti squash starting to brown up a little bit. And you can hear that sizzle, and that sizzle is great. Okay. We're going to go ahead and take this out. The tomato sauce is ready to rock and roll. So we're going to take our spaghetti squash off, and we're going to put this in the center of our plate. And again, we're going to try to make this presentation as dramatic and as nice as we possibly can. In the old days, when I was a chef coming up, we had to put all the food at 12, 3, and 7 o'clock to balance the plate. Now, when you balance your plate, you tend to put everything in the center, and then you kind of build around it. And if you want to put a sauce around the edges, you can do that as well. We're going to add some of the tomato sauce. We're going to do a little bit of a well here. We're going to put our tomato sauce right here in the center. Okay. And that's about 2 ounces of sausage for about 6 to 8 ounces of the spaghetti squash. So we have that here. We're going to push that in a little bit. And then we're going to add some of the cheese. So we're going to take the grater, and we're just going to move the grater up and down. And you can see what we're doing here is we're taking this, and as we move this through, all that cheese stays in the center of the microplaner. And these things are they're becoming less expensive because they're becoming a little more accessible. At stores, you can even find these at Kroger's now. So what we do with this now is all the cheese has collected in this little well in the microplaner. So we just take our fingers, push this down, and we're going to sprinkle this on top here. And here you have this amazing dish that looks great, tastes great, and again, it's going to make you feel better. And it literally, once you've eaten this 2 or 3 times, you'll never go back to regular pasta. I've tried some of the different pastas that are out there, and I think this is the best way to go. Instead of buying something that's kind of made in the lab, this is really the best way to go because it tastes delicious, it looks delicious, and it's very, very easy to prepare.
It smells great too.
So any questions about what we've seen here so far today?
I'll give people a few minutes to type, and but we got one person saying it looks very tasty.
And it is tasty, and I think the good thing about doing this in a private home is this aroma is going to stay here for a couple of days. So,
Yeah.
So you'll wake up hungry every hour, which is great. So you see what we've used today. You can do this on an electric stove. If you have a gas stove, you can do that. If you don't have a big Ninja like this, and if you have a small Ninja to make smoothies, you can do that to make your tomato sauce. It doesn't have to be that difficult. If you have your tomatoes and you want to, and don't have one of these, just chop them up on your cutting board, and it's a chunky sauce called a natural tomato sauce because it's completely natural, because all you did was chop it up, and when you chopped it up, you're leaving the nice chunks of tomatoes that have been roasted in there. So whenever they take a bite of that, they're going to get that nice bite of tomato. So don't ever think that, cooking is one of those things that you can kind of make up as you go. Baking, not so much, because everything has a certain aspect of what it does to the food when you bake it. But when you're cooking, you can go freestyle as often as you like. And we kind of did that here today, where we used the lime on the edamame and the sweet potatoes. With this here, we took a little bit of cheese instead of the basil, but you could do basil and cheese if you had that. If you had dried basil, it would be good. Not as great as fresh, but it's certainly going to give you that flavor. If you wanted to add more garlic to this, you could do that. So, I think the point here is, plant-based diet really is the way to go. have fun when you're cooking. I mean, because when you think about everything that you do during the day, I know that, I retired, I'm still working, but, when I was coming up, I had three kids. I was, going to ball practice, going to ballet practice, doing this. My wife was working full time, and there were very few opportunities to do something for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking is the one thing that you can do just for you, and it's going to do your body good because it's everything that your body craves. Because or you can pull up the Wendy's at the Wendy's drive-in. That's not what your body craves. You may think it does. Your brain craves that, but this is what your body wants. And I hopefully we're able to share that with you today to let you know that this is actually pretty easy to do.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jim, for Chef Jim, for coming on the channel and doing a great job. The food tastes and smells delicious. I haven't tasted the spaghetti squash yet, but that's only because I don't have a fork and I don't want to stick my fingers in it. Though I am very tempted, very tempted.
I've seen her do it before.
So thank you everybody for watching and joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed making the edamame along with us. And the spaghetti squash, hope you'll try that at some later time. I will post the full recipe for the spaghetti squash on the website, so you'll have that. And let's just enjoy your food. So thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.